Separated at the border, some of the immigrant children detained by the Trump administration are being held in El Cajon. We have a look inside the facility. And the ballot measure known as SDSU West will stay that way. How a judge's decision will keep November's election intact.
For some savvy homeowners who are looking for a way to invest in their property, this is a really smart, sensible thing to do.
A second home in the backyard. San Diegans navigate the rules, regulations, and fees that come with granny flats.
It's just beautiful to see the unity between Osiders.
Where I Come From heads to Oceanside. It's part of our special series on the people, communities, and cultures around San Diego. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebone Monet. Today, the Trump administration opened its doors to reporters in El Cajon to show a building that's part of the national discussion on immigration. It's a shelter for kids who've been separated from their parents while trying to cross into the U.S. KPBS Frontiers reporter Jean Guerrero has more.
We just got a really unusual opportunity to look inside of this youth migrant shelter behind me. There's been a lot of controversy about the Trump administration's practice of separating families at the border, and so the Department of Health and Human Services decided to open up this shelter to a media tour to allow some more transparency and to provide a look at the conditions under which some of these children are living. We saw the boys inside playing soccer. Some of them were in classrooms reading books, or some of them started reciting the words good day in Spanish and in various indigenous languages when we arrived. So there was this atmosphere of learning and playing. But one thing that was very particular about this tour is that the conditions under which we were allowed to go on it is that we were not allowed to do any video recording, no audio recording. We weren't allowed to speak with any of the children directly, so I couldn't interview them to get a real firsthand experience about what it's like to stay in these shelters. The shelter director mentioned that about 10% of the boys, all boys in this facility, were cases of family separation. So when they came to the border under the new Trump zero tolerance policy, the children were transferred from the Department of Homeland Security custody to the Office of Refugee and Resettlement, which keeps them in these shelters operated by Southwest Key. Meanwhile, the parents remain in detention and often face deportation, which, according to immigration attorneys, can result in the permanent separation of some of these families. But the work that they do here at this shelter is basically they try to find sponsors for these children. The first people that they go to is they try to find direct family relatives of the children who are living in the United States. If they can't find them or if they can't be with them because they're in detention and in criminal proceedings under the zero tolerance policy, they will look to friends of the family. And final resort is just foster care with anyone who's able to receive these children. The average stay at this facility is about 52 days. Southwest Key operates 27 immigrant youth shelters in Texas, Arizona, and California. And again, this is a tour that we were allowed to go on because of the criticism that the Trump administration's family separation practice has received. Yesterday was a Keep Families Together National Action Day on social media, a lot of protests being organized. So we got to look inside and see. I mean, we didn't see anything out of the ordinary. There were a lot of staff members who were answering our questions. For example, they told us that these children get to speak with a clinician who evaluates them for mental health trauma twice a week, and they try to help them work through the trauma of fleeing gang violence in many cases, or the trauma of the family separation. One thing, though, that is worth noting is they only get to make 2 phone calls a week, and they're 10 minutes long, and they're supervised. And in terms of getting them in touch with families who are in detention and in criminal proceedings, they often face a lot of difficulty. In El Cajon, Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Today at the White House, President Donald Trump spoke to reporters about the administration's child separation policy. He says it won't change until Democrats in Congress support a broader immigration plan that includes funding for a new border wall.
I hate to see separation of parents and children. The Democrats can come to us as they actually are, in all fairness, we are talking to them, and they can change the whole border security. We need a wall. We need border security. We got to get rid of catch and release. You catch a criminal, you take his name, you release him, and he never shows up again. He goes into our society. And then we end up getting him in a different way, oftentimes after he's killed somebody. We've got to change our laws.
PBS NewsHour will have more on this story coming up at 7 p.m., including a report from KPBS reporter Jean Guerrero. President Trump's former campaign chairman is in jail and will stay there until his federal trial begins in fall. Prosecutors say Paul Manafort contacted future witnesses and told them to lie to the jury. Manafort has pleaded not guilty to money laundering, tax evasion, conspiracy, and other crimes. He led Trump's campaign for a couple of months, including when Trump was formally nominated at the Republican Party convention. A judge has weighed in with an important decision that impacts the proposal for the Mission Valley Stadium site. SDSU West will remain on the ballot, but opponents say they will appeal. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has more.
Soccer City backers challenged the use of San Diego State University in the ballot measure, arguing that use of the name violates state law and the state education code. The writ of mandate argued San Diego petition signers were deceived, those signatures should be invalidated, and the measure should be removed from the November ballot. Judge Joel Wolfell rejected that assertion and denied the request. SDSU West officials hope voters approve their plan to sell the Mission Valley Stadium site to the school so San Diego State can build an auxiliary campus. Soccer City wants to leverage the redevelopment of the same site to lure a Major League Soccer team to San Diego. Both developments include housing, commercial space, a sports stadium, and a river park. However, both SDSU West and the Soccer City initiative still face legal challenges brought by the San Diego City attorney. Mara Elliott is asking the courts to remove the measure from the ballot because she says they are both legally flawed. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
At last night's San Ysidro School Board meeting, a state audit was delivered, and it wasn't good news. iNews Source reporter Leonardo Castaneda was there.
The audit presented last night found that 2 former administrators potentially mishandled district funds, engaged in possible financial fraud, and overpaid themselves more than $300,000. County School Superintendent Paul Gothold forwarded those findings to the district attorney today. He's the one who asked for the audit, and he presented it to the San Ysidro School Board last night.
Tomorrow morning, based on the results of this audit, our office will be notifying the state controller, State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and the district attorney that sufficient evidence exists to indicate that fraud or misappropriation of district funds and or assets or other illegal fiscal activities may have occurred.
The state auditors investigated payments made to former Superintendent Julio Fonseca and his deputy, Jose Arturo Sanchez Macias. They concluded the 2 men were overpaid $100,000 for life insurance and about $50,000 for cashed out vacation days they shouldn't have been given under their contracts. The auditors also found the men used the district's petty cash to avoid the district's financial controls for some purchases, such as buying gift cards, televisions, and an iPad for an employee giveaway. Auditors also reviewed 78 payments and reimbursements connected to Fonseca and Sanchez Macias. All but one of them had problems. The audit also found issues with the San Ysidro School Board, saying the trustees approved contract amendments for Fonseca and Sanchez Macias without discussing them at public meetings, and the board failed to make the contracts publicly available as required by law. Though this audit is finished, Gothold told the board it raised new questions.
The initial audit also identified other areas within the district that require further exploration. As a result, I've requested a second audit to examine contract agreements with outside parties.
In the meantime, the district has 15 days to tell Gothold what they plan to do about these audit's findings. Fonseca has now returned messages seeking comment about the audit. I talked to Sanchez Macias by phone after the meeting, and he disputed some of the findings, including that he and Fonseca misused petty cash. He also said he would vigorously defend himself against the allegations. For KPBS, I'm my News Source reporter, Leonardo Castañeda.
San Diego Unified School District recently lost out on federal funding to help homeless students because of a missing signature on an application. It turns out other local school districts also got rejected. iNews Source reporter Megan Wood has more.
Like San Diego Unified, the South Bay Union and La Mesa Spring Valley school districts also submitted incomplete applications to the state to get funding to help educate homeless students. South Bay Union failed to complete a document detailing district demographics, and La Mesa Spring Valley didn't provide 2 copies of the application as required. That disqualified both districts for up to $225,000 over the next 3 years. Walter Phillips is CEO of the nonprofit San Diego Youth Services. He said getting a grant proposal denied right off the bat is unusual, but it can happen.
It just really depends on the funder, and oftentimes it's the way I think that they kind of make their first cut. Did you follow the instructions or not?
Of the 128 applications for homeless student funding the state received this year, 15 were disqualified. But 3 San Diego County districts will be getting some of the federal dollars: San Ysidro, Poway, and Escondido Union. For KPBS, I'm iNews Source reporter Megan Wood.
iNews Source is an independently funded nonprofit partner of KPBS. 15 months, 12 proposals, and a special committee later. San Diego voters are a step closer to weighing in on school board election reform. KPBS education reporter Megan Burks says the city is now reviewing a ballot proposal to establish term limits for San Diego Unified trustees.
School matters are technically nonpartisan, but the city's Rules Committee voted along party lines this week on several competing proposals to change school board elections. The 3 Democrats on the committee voted to move forward with a union-backed ballot proposal that would limit trustees to 12 years in office. They voted down a plan backed by Republicans and community members of all stripes to cap service at 8 years.
People do want to see term limits, but we also know that we need terms that are long enough to see policies enacted and followed through on.
The decision comes after months of public discussion, including a survey that suggested voters would prefer trustees have less time in office. District appointees who administered the survey said Wednesday that the survey wasn't scientifically sound.
I have not heard any compelling arguments whatsoever why we shouldn't treat the school district election similar to what we treat both the county and ourselves here on the city council. I agree with Mr. Stump. It is illustrative that the individuals in charge are now condemning, nonetheless, their own survey.
The committee will consider the proposal once more next month before sending it to the full city council and later the ballot. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
San Diego teachers who sexually harass students aren't always fired. Terminally ill patients who want to end their lives are in legal limbo. And how to help PTSD patients who don't believe they deserve to get better. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
California's unemployment rate is still at a record low. Last month, 5,500 jobs were added in the state. The unemployment rate is 4.2%, which is the same number as April. In May of last year, the unemployment rate was just under 5%. Improvements to Brown Field and Otay Mesa will keep the airport operating for years to come. The city of San Diego announced a major renovation project is complete. It included repaving the runway and updating important displays. Money for the project came from a grant from the FAA. Last month, the San Diego City Council made it easier for people to use their backyards to address the city's housing shortage. They're officially called companion units, but they're also known as granny flats. KPBS reporter Claire Tragesser has a look at how much they cost and how much it costs to get started.
The front door is positioned here. We're going to have a walkway down there. Separate entrance.
Kit Gately has big plans for the backyard at her North Park home.
The kitchen will be on your right. There'll be like stove and refrigerator, sink, and then a little counter along here.
She's planning to build a granny flat for someone else to live in. She got the idea when she heard from a friend who needs a place to live and can't afford the high rents in San Diego.
I started thinking of an old dream of mine, which had been to raise the roof. You know, we have like a little attic upstairs, and I really wanted to push up that, you know, make a whole full second floor, put a little apartment up there. I thought that'd be way cool.
Way cool until she heard the price tag, more than $300,000.
So that kind of got abandoned, but then I just started thinking, what if we, could we, any chance of, building something in the backyard?
Gately found out building a granny flat would have half the price tag, a maximum of $150,000. She's owned her home for more than 30 years, so she could refinance it and then charge rent to cover the construction costs. So she had an architect draw up plans and was ready to get permits from the city.
They are ready to grant it. However, if we wait 2 weeks more, we can save, well, Gerald says $9,000, somewhere around there, because the city council just voted to waive the environmental impact fees and other fees for these units because they're really trying to encourage the building of them. If we wait 2 more weeks, we were going to save that money. So that's a no-brainer.
Last month, the San Diego City Council voted to slash several of the fees for building granny flats. The savings range from $8,000 to more than $30,000, depending on several factors, including what part of the city the flat will be built and whether it's new or existing construction. In a statement, Mayor Kevin Faulconer said the idea was to increase the city's housing supply. This will be another tool we'll use to tackle our housing needs, he said.
So right here this is being dug out as a basement accessory dwelling unit, so it'll be about 700 square feet when it's all said and done.
Caitlin Bigelow is checking in on a construction project at a home just north of Balboa Park. She runs a company called Maxable Space that connects homeowners from across the state with information about building granny flats. She says San Diego is behind the curve in this type of construction.
People were balking at these big price tags and saying, I can't afford to build this is crazy. But the city just waived the development and impact fees, so now we're seeing a big uptick in owners who have been interested in this kind of project, but it was cost prohibitive up until this point.
Bigelow says she doesn't expect every homeowner in San Diego will now build a new apartment in the backyard.
This is never going to be something that appeals to the masses. Americans like their privacy and they like their yard. But for some savvy homeowners who are looking for a way to invest in their property, this is a really smart, sensible thing to do.
But even with the reduced fees, not everyone can afford the construction.
So I was seriously thinking about building a casita because I had this large backyard. And I obviously care about the fact that we have an affordable housing crisis.
Environmental activist Nicole Capritz wanted to build a small apartment at her Kensington home. But the six-figure price tag was just too high, and she wasn't ready to refinance and take out a loan.
And so in the short term, it felt overwhelming. And so I've postponed those plans. And so perhaps one day I'll be in a position where I feel more comfortable moving forward. But at this point, the costs are still too high, which is unfortunate because I'm sure a lot of people are similarly situated to me.
Back in North Park, homeowner Kit Gately is ready to get construction going on her granny flat. The only thing she's slightly sad about is the loss of that space in her backyard.
I play in a band, so we would have little house concerts out there, and we actually got married out there.
But she's still planning on saving a portion of her yard. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, we speak to 2 North Korean defectors to get their take on President Trump's dealings with Kim Jong-un. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
More than 3 million people call San Diego and Imperial County home. With 9,000 square miles of space, we have lots of communities across the region. And as part of our KPBS Explore project, we traveled to 5 communities to find out what makes them so special. Now, we head to Oceanside, a military town that's home to a mix of cultures from around the world. Here's the latest from our special series, Where I Come From.
I grew up, my best friends were Samoan, Black, Panamanian, and Mexican, and Korean, and I'm Filipino.
A lot of military families came from back in the day. I know that my grandparents, came and settled in here and brought the family. In that way, it seems to have been an explosion of Polynesian people.
Whenever I go to a sports bar, that's when you find out how many people are from different spaces. Because we have the military base here also, we get a lot of migrant people here.
Oceanside has different little groups, and where I come from in Oceanside is a very migrant-like community.
We are very territorial, but not in a sense where it's negative.
Within our community, we're very segregated. If you step outside of Oceanside, we rep really hard.
That idea of family, it's just beautiful to see the unity between Oceansiders.
The love between us. In no other space will you see it as different people hanging out with each other.
So I'm actually African American, Filipino, and Mexican.
I think it's a reflection of our nation.
That's Oceanside.
And so I feel like I'm a product of Oceanside. There's so much culture here.
Coexisting and all of us just finding a place in the sun together and just chilling.
You can watch the rest of this series at kpbs.org/Where I Come From. We like to hear what you think about our series. You can join the conversation on our KPBS Facebook page. Well, slightly cooler weather is expected for this Father's Day weekend. Justin Pavic has details in tonight's forecast.
Now, as we look ahead down the road throughout the weekend into next week, notice, at least in the short term, we're talking about the clouds and the cool, along with, again, some milder temperatures. Well, those look like they're reserved for early next week, perhaps. We'll touch on that coming up, along with the potential for more sunshine. Well, you've noticed, again, some clouds around into the short term. And notice you see lots of green, much of that precipitation not making it to the ground. But there have been a few reports of light shower activity, again, away from the coast, especially over the mountains and the deserts. A few showers could linger into this evening. Nothing substantial here, but a little bit of rain for a couple of spots. All the moisture, though, will be sliding east in the days to come. Thickening clouds as the onshore flow comes back into place later on tonight. We drop down into the mid-60s. Let's check out area-wide temperatures for tonight. Chula Vista down to 63, Oceanside 62. Notice Ramona down into the 50s, Borrego Springs, Mount Laguna. These are some of the spots that stand the chance for a shower here in the short term. Few around, especially points south and east, but all that moisture will be kind of pushed off to the east as we venture into your Saturday. And that means the onshore flow back in effect. Some cooler numbers than recent days around San Diego and Chula Vista and Oceanside, mainly into the 60s here. And the drought monitor, we're in the dry season, keep that in mind. So we're not expecting precipitation this time of the year to be that plentiful, but notice still in the midst of that severe drought. So at least some rain would be beneficial. They'll see some of that over the Four Corners as we talk about the weekend. By early week, though, that too is sliding its way further to the east. So out of the coast, a misty start Sunday, a little drizzle out there. But then as the onshore flow breaks down, we'll see some more sunshine by Wednesday. Temperatures climbing back into the 70s, but it could be, several degrees below normal here for inland locations the next few days. More sunshine come Tuesday and Wednesday. Mountainous terrain, warming trend kicks in Tuesday into Wednesday with lots of sunshine. And over the deserts as well, a little cooler here Sunday into Monday, but we bounce back come Tuesday and Wednesday. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Justin Pavic. Back over to you, Ebony.
The city of Chicago is teaming up with Tesla founder Elon Musk to build a high-speed underground travel network. The Boring Company will cover all the cost of the project. It's the same concept that Musk is working on in LA. In Chicago, the plan is to build a tunnel that will carry passengers from downtown to the O'Hare International Airport in about 12 minutes. Elon Musk says the project will be complete in about 3 years. This weekend at the movies, aliens invade the 1970s London punk scene. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando reviews how to talk to girls at parties.
As with Hedwig and the Angry Inch, John Cameron Mitchell's How to Talk to Girls at Parties combines youth, music, and rebellion, but this time with aliens. It's London in the 1970s, and nothing symbolizes teen revolt more than punk music. In fact, it proves the perfect outlet for one intergalactic traveler who's fed up with being a passive observer.
Hello, my name is N, short for Henry.
I'm Zan.
Now that is punk.
Do more punk to me.
How to Talk to Girls refreshes the usual teen movie with some wild costumes and production design, but it doesn't find anything particularly new to say about teens coming of age. It's a fun, occasionally touching film that shows Mitchell has style to burn and a compassionate sensibility. It doesn't feel as clever or personal as Hedwig, but at least it strives for originality in its approach. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
The radio voice of the Padres and Aztecs, Ted Leitner, has announced this afternoon he's cancer-free. The longtime broadcaster underwent surgery this month to remove a tumor that was so invasive, doctors had to remove a kidney. Leitner says his doctors believed the tumor was cancerous, but tests after the surgery revealed it was benign. He's planning to return to work with the Padres very soon. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.